Hello again, everyone. I'm Rashmi from NCBS, a grad student from NCBS, and I'm continuing with the moderation for our next session. And now I would like to welcome you for our next session on career navigation. And uh, I hope we have Smita and Tracy on board. Yes. At a stage in career where deciding what's next becomes crucial as well as a difficult choice due to multiple constraints, it becomes very important that we have a mentor to help us out. Questions like what is next? How do I go about it? Why should I be doing this? Am I the correct person to be doing this? Etc. are inevitable. Hence, a proper direction and mentorship play an invaluable role. So, we decided to have this session specially dedicated for that. It is an interesting and important session for senior PhDs and postdocs, especially. So, we decided to live stream this session on YouTube for everyone. So, you can assure your colleagues, this is for participants. I hope you can assure your colleagues who are not a part of this symposia can also benefit from this ongoing session. Please find the link for the YouTube session in the handbook. Also, if you can't find it there, you'll soon find it in our chat box section, and do share it with people. So let's begin. For today's session, we have Dr. Smita Jain, the Executive Director at India Bioscience. After completing her PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Smita worked for biotechnology industries, following which she ventured into the field of science administration, business development, and leadership. She's passionate about mentoring researchers for career in science and their professional development. Currently, as an executive director at India Bioscience, she has a diverse role in establishing the strategic vision and partnership. From growth, fundraising, grants, and team management to overseeing the activities of networking, communication, and policies, Smita has a wonderful experience as a leader. India by Science is an organization that works to increase the visibility of science in society and promote changes through engagement in academia, government, and industries. We are also excited to have Dr. Tracy Costello today, a career coach and a professional development consultant at Coach for Postdoc. Tracy did her PhD in biomathematics and biostatistics from University of Texas, following a postdoc at Anderson Cancer Center. She transitioned her career to a statistical analyst there, and during her postdoc, she served as the chair of a local postdoc association and the National Postdoctoral Association Board of Directors. Currently, as a career coach at Coach for Postdocs and as an executive coach for STEM Pairs Gurukul Networking, she mentors PhD and postdoc with her expertise in advocacy, policy, mentoring, coaching, resource development, innovative problem solving, and oral and written communication. She volunteers her time as a member of the National Postdoctoral Association Board of Directors and as a vice president of US Relations on the Board of Directors for STEM Pairs. Before I hand over to both of these amazing speakers, a couple of announcements. This is a Zoom webinar. So as a participant, you will be able to listen to our panelists and can ask questions using only the Q&A section of your Zoom toolbox. You'll be muted throughout the session, so please use the Q&A for your questions, not the chat box. At the end of the session, my colleague Sridivya and I will be taking questions to the speakers. If you haven't found the link to YouTube yet, I hope you find that in the chat section now. So without making any delay, I would hand over the session to our speakers.
Thank you. Thanks, Rashmi. And good morning, everyone who are part of the audience here. So maybe before me and Tracy get started, if I can just take a couple of seconds and check if my audio video is fine and if I can start sharing the screen. Tracy, is that fine?
Yeah, go ahead. It's super early morning here.
I know. For Tracy, it's a little pretty late in the night. Okay. So we when we were handed over this topic, me and Tracy were kind of, we got onto a call, we started interacting, and we realized that the best would be to keep this session informal at the very outset, that's something I would want to, make. And we will keep it in a conversation style. So me and Tracy would keep going back and forth and, keep talking about some of the key elements that one must keep in mind in this career exploration journey. So I guess we'll spend about 30 minutes in this. Hopefully we'll stick to our times, and then we would be more than happy to take questions. Okay. So the most important question, I guess, that we must address when we start talking about career, and I guess the previous speakers in the previous panel discussion very, very beautifully touched upon these aspects. We saw how Shashi moved from a postdoc to where he is today, and how beautifully he has navigated this journey. We heard Srinath, we heard Aisha talk about the skill sets that this degree brings in. We talk about Indumati, who said it's never too late, and things like that. And that really makes our life much easier now for this session, because the stage is set. So the most important thing that each one of us have to think is, what is this why? And that's where the self-contemplation and understanding of this difference between career and job becomes very, very important. We saw that the previous speakers, all of them spoke about their career journeys. They were not talking about just the jobs that they have been doing. And that's how they all are successful. So what is this difference? I guess we need to understand that career is this lifelong journey. It never ends. There is no end to it. It's a very, very long journey, which entails a lot of learning, a lot of hard work, and a lot of passion. Again, a word that was emphasized by the previous speakers multiple times. It's this passion that makes the career journey beautiful. And at the end of it, you become successful. So very important to keep in mind that it's not just a job that you should be looking at, which would support your basic needs. It's important. Again, as Aisha mentioned, it's very, very important that you get decent financial benefits from whatever you are doing. But at the end of it, the motivation and that happiness factor is missing when you're just going after a job. Whereas when you decide to go ahead on a career path, you remain motivated, you derive happiness and success. So, with that, I guess I would want to make another statement that it's your responsibility. Your career is your responsibility, no one else's. And that is why it's very, very important that you know that whatever you are doing, how would you go about it and why would you go about it? So, here comes this golden circle, which forces you to self-contemplate and think that why do you want? Why is nothing but the purpose, which at the end gives that satisfaction and happiness. That why do you want to do something that you want to do? And in order to do that, what would you do and how would you do? So with that, I guess I would hand it over to Tracy, who's now going to talk about knowing yourself. Tracy.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you set all of that up, and I want to reiterate that we've seen beautiful stories of journeys, and they told us all of the positive steps moving forward. But just recognize that when you take a step, if it's not quite the right one, you take another step and another step and another step, and that's how every single one of us has moved our careers forward. So as you're uncovering that why, you'll be thinking about the skills and interests. And you're going to be considering career options that fit with that, and carefully considering your career and your career path requires that you're taking time. Yeah, you can go ahead and automate all of that, that you take time to identify those options. So I'm a statistician. I like a good model. Each of these intersections in this model has a challenge, and I've outlined them there for you. But so for the first one, if you know that you have your skills and your interests, but you don't see an option, it is absolutely possible to create one, but you have to be super clear clear on the idea, the need for that idea, and be able to sell it to the right person. So that's a little entrepreneurial spirit. And we've heard a lot about that this morning, this morning already. It's possible in that second intersection to gain skills, but you want to try and do that before you need them. So looking ahead and paying attention to what's coming for you is really important. And the third one is it's possible to identify options that your skills fit and that you have zero interest in. And we've heard that this morning too, right? It's as important to know what you want to do or what you don't want to do as it is to know what you want to do. There we go. I was going to get there one point. I need more coffee. So, I've been talking about all of these connections for about 10 years now. And like all great ideas, I actually discovered, I'd been talking about it, and I discovered in my research that it had been discovered long, long ago, far, far before my time. So if you want to hit next slide. And it's a concept from Japan called ikigai, and it means a reason for being. So all of you who are here with us today have discovered that the world needs scientists. That aligns with your love of science and how good you are with doing science. And I like this model because it includes that skills and the interests and the career options. And I say options because you do have a lot of different options. And it adds that layer of what the world needs. And you can hit next slide. So we said that, right, that there's a lot of varied career options within the broad context of how science gets done. And I want to dive into that and pass it back to Dr. Jain.
Sorry. Okay. Thanks, Tracy. I guess this is something we have seen again. I'm very happy that the previous session happened because, we got some amazing, we got to hear some amazing career stories, which are not as straightforward as this slide depicts. Mostly what we think when we get into any science degree is this one simple, straightforward ladder that, graduation, post-graduation, PhD, then we would go for a postdoc and we become a faculty. We become an educator or a researcher or both. That's the most obvious career choices that are put across. But with the change in the ecosystem, a lot has changed. I guess it's no longer this one linear path that exists for us. And that's something we must keep in mind. The career progression can be very, very different. These can be cross-cutting ladders. These can be straight ladders where you're working individually, you're contributing individually for the benefit of the ecosystem. But what is very, very important to keep in mind is that the degree that we get is not just a degree to make us or go that one single path. It provides us with multiple skill sets. And with those skill sets, one gets the ability to diverge into multiple different career paths. And what are these skill sets? I guess most of us are having this. It's just that what is important is this awareness that we have these skill sets. Scientific temperament, we all know that, when you finish a certain degree, certain level of education, you get that. You learn to work independently. You learn to, carry out your research, ask these questions of why, how, what. You learn the ability to continuously gain new knowledge and skill sets. Even during your PhD, there are so many new things that we learn. We learn to cope with this heavy workload. And why I've listed down these few, and self-motivation, again, the most important key skill set that we learned during our PhD. And why we have listed down these skill sets here is that these are skill sets that come handy in any career path that you would want to get into. Be it entrepreneurship, be it communications, be it policy making, or into research or education. These are the key skill sets that will help you navigate that career journey beautifully, successfully, and with contentment. So very important to keep in mind that with these skill sets and yes, ability to resolve conflicts, we get into conflicts so many times, and these are not just conflicts with ourselves, with our colleagues, with our mentors, but at various different levels. And I guess Tracy is going to touch upon that a little later down the line. But with that, with those skill sets that we have, what all we can do. And here Tracy is going to walk us through the various possibilities. Tracy, back to you again. Tracy, you need to unmute yourself.
I'm so sorry. So beyond what you can do, right? We've talked a lot about all of the skills and all of the rich experiences that you're gaining while you're in your training. Besides what you can do, you really do want to uncover and discover what you want to do. So paying attention to all those opportunities that are around you and taking advantage of trying pieces of different careers and talking to people who have been down different paths from the one that you think you're on. Even if that definition is or defines something that you don't want to do, that's equally important. So there is no magic career that's just going to appear for you. And you have to own that. We already said you have to take responsibility for your own career. So this list isn't everything, but it is some broad categories that you can start to think about beyond where you're at right now. So academics is there, pharma is there. Those are the obvious two. In the US, those two sectors comprise about 80% of where the postdocs go. But there's so many different opportunities to do this. And I know that all of these exist here in the US, but they exist in every country across the globe. Science truly is a global enterprise, and there's lots of different ways that science needs to get done. So if you're most interested in imparting knowledge, for example, if you think about, the thing that really truly interests you, that's teaching, right? If the piece that resonates with you is bridging a gap between science and society, then you want to consider something in science communication or in science policy. Or if helping technology reach the market is really what drives you, what excites you, what keeps you up at night, right? In a good way that we talked about earlier, or that the other speaker talked about earlier, wasn't me. Consider tech transfer or venture capitalism or become an entrepreneur. And, you've already met one today. Reach out and talk about, do that informational interview. Informational interview to discover, how was the path and what were the tough things and how can you set yourself up for success to overcome that? So I think we can go ahead and hit next slide. And we're going to jump into some ways to, some tools to give you that you can be working on right now to prepare for different career paths long before you've actually figured out what that is. So figure out what it is, but also in parallel, make sure that you're starting to think about what those materials and resources need to look like. And I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Jain for a summary.
Tracy, you can call me Smita.
Oh, okay.
This is a very informal session. Okay, so I guess as Tracy very rightly pointed out, that these are two things, one, understanding where you want to go, what is your forte, which path you would want to go. And it's not possible to identify this path at the very outset. It's also possible that once you have omitted out the parts where you do not want to enter, and then start looking for. If you'll ask me, that's precisely what had happened with me. So, and I'm still exploring. It's not that you hit an end. There is no end in this career journey because you keep exploring newer and newer paths. But that goes on forever. But at the same time, what is also important, as Tracy just mentioned, to keep in mind these key tools that are needed to craft your career. And what are these key tools? Very, very important that we learn to build our network. No one would tell us at the very outset, at the very start, that a network is important, a network is key in a positive way to influence this career journey. It becomes extremely easy to move ahead. Again, I would emphasize, not in a negative way, but in a positive way, if you have a strong network. If we know how to work on our CVs and resumes, if we know how to take interviews very, very seriously, if we know how to introduce ourselves effectively, communicate what is it that you bring to the table, and that is important for any role that you are seeking in, and why is it important to have mentors. So I guess we are going to touch upon these key tools in our next few slides, but this is something that we would definitely want to pay more attention, because these are, as I said, really, really important, that would help in crafting your career journey very successfully. So I would hand it over to Tracy again to talk in details about how one can effectively network. Tracy. Yes, Tracy, you are muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I hit all the animations. That's great. So I want to encourage everyone to be really strategic as you're building that network. And I'm giving you this mind map so that you can think of the different categories of individuals that you interact with throughout your entire journey so far, and think about what is important and who you want to bring into that network. Your network is yours, you're defining it, and it's really, if you don't like a group that's here, then don't include them, right? That's fine. But I'm broadly defining this so that you can think of everyone that you've forgotten, and start to bring them and add them into your network. So really crucially important, right? This is a group that you can draw from for informational interviews so that you can understand whether you want to transition into that space. You can hear their story, you can resonate with what they're doing, you can think about, and hear their perspective on that career sector. You can understand the inside information about the skills necessary to help you be successful. And you can start to do and learn some of those things now and help you as you're moving forward with that. There's additional insight that you can get from this. And one of those is, what is the salary range? What is the benefits package look like? And you don't have to ask, what is your salary? You can say, based on my research, I think the salary is this. And most people are really comfortable confirming a salary range on a job title because it's not personal, right? But that gives you a lot of information that's going to really define for yourself, if you're mentally in that headspace of, this is a role that I could really see myself in. It comes through in your cover letters, it comes through in your interviews. And it makes you align with that much better. So if you want to hit the next slide, particularly, in that elevator pitch, when you're starting to think about what that looks like, it really is that tell me about yourself question that you sometimes get asked. Like, it's the first question you're going to get asked in your interview, probably. You want to think about an engaging conversational way to describe your experiences that starts to, bring in what the job needs and how your experiences address that. I comment here to use analogies because that helps people with tough concepts that they may not be familiar with, and avoid that first part, right? Where you're, me. It's all, if you don't bring in anything about the job, that's going to be the end of your interview trail. And you're going to be having other first interviews and you're never going to be progressing into that space. So think very carefully about what goes into that space. And you can go ahead, because I think the next thing is CVs and resumes. Yeah, take it away, Smita. You're muted.
I'm not going to mute myself.
I know.
We'll just keep it like that.
Thinking.
Else it's difficult. Okay. Very nicely put together. So we saw that how networking, and again, because of paucity of time, we are not getting into the in depth of how to build networks. What are the key elements that one has to keep in mind?
Yeah.
Even elevator pitches. There's lot written in on internet you will find. Again, India Bioscience has created a good amount of resources which one can actually tap into. Maybe during the question and answer session, I'll see if I can post some of those links. And but what is also very important is this is a slide, again, I'm using from India Bioscience Crafting Your Career module that me and my colleague Shreya and Lakshmi had put together. So very, very important. And this is where most of us get rejected, honestly speaking, especially when in today's world, when the competition is so stiff and there are so many people applying for those so little jobs. How do you stand out? And the way to stand out is how do you present yourself? And the very first way that you present yourself is through that piece of paper where you put down your life journey, so till that point in time, right? And also very important to understand here is this difference between CV and resume. Where would you send a CV? Where would you send a resume? And another key point to keep in mind is that you can't, and again Tracy would touch upon that, is that you can't send the same thing to 100 different jobs. You have to tailor make it. So before we get onto that, what is important to understand is the difference between CV and resume. Resume is something which is very targeted. You create for a specific job that you are applying for, whereas a CV is basically the ongoing academic and your work history. And you put almost everything that you have done till that point in time in that CV. It's continuously evolving. It includes all different experiences, accomplishments that you have had. Whereas a resume is very succinct, it's very crisp, and it includes only information that's relevant for that particular job. And since it's crisp, it's not a long, unlimited, document, unlike CV, which, as I said, it's virtually unlimited, depends on your accomplishments, your experiences, and your previous experiences. It can be really, really long. But a resume is not more than 1 to 2 page. We use CV mostly for academic job purposes. When you are applying for a faculty position, for a research position, for an education position, whereas a resume is used mostly for most of the non-academic positions, because they require you to present that what are the key skill sets that you bring to the table, and that's what your resume would reflect. So over to you, Tracy, wherein you would be talking more about targeting this resume for the job.
Absolutely. So, as you're considering that resume for different positions, you really want to make sure that you're targeting or tailoring. You've heard it both ways. I'm sure if you've looked at the internet to see what's out there, really what the employer needs. And when I say that, I'm thinking, read through that job ad and really pick the 3 to 5 things that company organization wants, and then pick the skills that you have that match with that, so that you really do get that tight connection. So the analogy I want to give you is that if you want to give them the specific pieces and information that they need, that's like a glass of water. They're thirsty, they need just enough to quench that thirst. In a 2-page resume, they don't need to know everything that you've ever done. That's like spraying them down with a fire hose, right? And your LinkedIn profile, absolutely put everything there. It can be the CV/fire hose version, but this is really critical as we're moving forward with your when we're thinking about what happens to your application through the whole process. So if you want to advance the slide, we'll talk about that. So there's an interesting eye tracking study that shows where the heat map of where HR people are looking when they are considering different resumes. And you'll notice one has kind of an F shape and the other one has kind of a top half of the page shape. But the first thing that happens when you craft all of your documents is you put them into an applicant tracking system, or ATS. And for space reasons, I abbreviated everything, and I apologize for the acronyms. But an applicant tracking system is really just a filter. The computer is trying to match based on the keywords that someone programmed. So someone in HR decided what the criteria was, and it's trying to match your resume and your content against that criteria. The criteria is very tightly tied to that job description. So the more you mirror that job description and more you tailor, the more likely you are to get past this step, which is important because now all of a sudden you're on an HR person's desk and somebody has eyes on your documents. Now, there's data that show that you get 6 seconds to grab their attention, or 7, depending on which version of the study you look at. But I'll argue there's probably not statistical significance between 6 seconds and 7 seconds. At this point, that's the top half of a first page of your 2 pages. So grab their attention, start with key skills, start with the most important big picture relevant things that tie back to those 5 pieces that come out of that job description. Once you get past the HR person who says, oh my gosh, they meet all of our criteria, this is fantastic, it's going to get passed to a hiring manager, and that person makes the decision to bring you in for an interview. And that, I think, brings us to our next topic of why are we doing interviews?
Okay, so here maybe I would just like to add a point.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to add a point here that maybe in India, especially for most of the job processes, we do not have, at least in the life sciences, we do not have this automated tracking system process, but still any HR or any hiring manager would be receiving large number of applications, which many screen through manually. And there again, it's the first page which grabs the attention. Personally, from my personal experience, I can share that when we get applications, it's the cover letter and the first few, top few sentences of that resume that matters the most. So one has to, really put in good amount of effort in order to convey what you want to convey and why you think you are suitable for that particular job role. So moving that, now that you've moved past that stage, you put in a best application, you've been selected, you've come for the interview. Here again, it's very, very important to know that why is this interview being conducted? And it's just to understand those key 3 things. The interview process is happening because they want to assess your skills. Can you do the work? And that comes from your knowledge and the qualification and the degree that you have. So you have to demonstrate that you have that knowledge and the qualification to do that work. And that's your skills. The second major point that an interview process assesses is the motivation level. Will you do the work? Even if you have the skills, will you do that work? And there you have to demonstrate that, yes, you are interested and you are motivated and you would, with passion, carry out that work. So that's another way to convince the committee that, yes, you are a motivated person and you will, with your skills, carry out that work diligently. And the third is, even, these 2 fit in really well. What especially in today's world, I feel the committees also try to understand is whether you align well with that job, whether your values align well with that particular job description. Will you fit in? Even if you are motivated at that point in time to take up that job or that opportunity, whether you would stay motivated, whether you would fit in because of your own value systems. So you have to demonstrate that your values or whatever purpose you have for yourself that you have set in, whether that fits the culture of the work. So with these three things, it's extremely important that you go ahead and face that interview. Few other quick things that one must do and one must not do. Read the room really well. Be prompt with your answers. You it should be quick, and that's why I say prompt. Very clear, be assertive, be relevant. Don't diverge here and there. Stick to the question that has been asked. Be yourself. You don't have to portray that you are someone else. Only when you remain natural is when you would be able to do all of those things that have been listed before that, and be honest. What one must keep in mind is, don't ignore the pulse of the room. Don't take too long to answer. Don't fumble. Don't look distracted. Don't share too much. So these are basically just the opposite of what you must be doing at the interview process. Don't portray who you are not, because the interviewers definitely are much more experienced and they will figure that out. And don't misquote or share any wrong information, because at some point it'll get caught, and that's going to be terrible for your journey later on. So these were few quick things I wanted to share based on the experience that we've gained so far in taking different interview processes. Again, something that we thought we would list out here, what is very, very important, and each one of us must keep in mind, regardless of whether you are going for your first job or later, are some key soft skills that each one of us must have. And if not, we must inculcate or build upon, because that's what today's employers are looking for. Be it academic, be it non-academic, these are certain skill sets that have been listed out here, are things which will really, really help navigate your career journey. People skill. Shashi mentioned, right, that today most of the collaborations are becoming, or most of the projects are becoming very interdisciplinary. And because of the interdisciplinary nature of these projects, you need to interact with a lot of different kinds of people. Your organizational skills, your ability to communicate and connect, not just with your peers, not just with your collaborators, but a much larger, wider audience. Your negotiation skills, how how much you have the ability to continuously learn, because in today's world, again, take my words, learning is not going to stop, because the moment you stop learning, your career is not going to progress further. It's no longer the jobs that people would do in the last century. You have to continuously learn. Your ability to give attention to details, your ability to manage times, your ability to multitask, all that are really, really key skills that you must keep in mind. Okay, sorry. Okay, with that, I guess we are coming to the end of our presentation, but then these are some really key attributes that Tracy is going to talk about, which, in spite of all that we have seen so far, we keep all that in mind, we work towards it, we strive our best to, attain all of that. But these are another really, really key points that all of us must have in our consideration if we want to stay successful, if we want to enjoy that journey. So over to you, Tracy.
Thanks. So today we've been talking about being intentional with training. You can go ahead and hit the next slide so we can get through these last couple. But progression means change, and we all have a lot going on. I want to honor that and recognize that things can be going great and then shift and be challenging. And we want to be able to manage all of those expectations. So this is a theory of change that was published about 10 years ago. And, the strength here that I want to highlight is that you have a cohort around you of, colleagues in graduate schools or your postdocs, colleagues in your labs at all different levels. And if you get into a dip, they can help pull you out of this. So make sure you leverage all of the people around you. But it's all about developing a plan, setting goals, being intentional, and that's how you find the resilience to get back up when you have an unexpected event or challenge that brings you down. Failure is inevitable. We have it every day in the lab, right? We have it every day in our work, but we get up and we continuously do that. That's your resilience. So I want to highlight that you've already learned that. Excellent. Okay. Next slide. The other piece that I want to talk about is imposter syndrome. And I see this a lot with all the different groups that I interact with. There's great research that talks about different aspects of that. High achievers have more of this, report more of this. So guess what? We're all high achievers, right? We're all, in school and moving forward and doing hard things. And that's what this is about, right? Some of the ways that this manifests is fear of failure. Some of it's sometimes it's perfectionism that just paralyzes you. So you just want to be able to acknowledge that and move forward. So we don't want you to take a lesser position or anything because you've downplayed your accomplishments. And in this case, I just want to say your insight is a key piece to the bigger picture. We need your brain to solve all of these big problems that we have. And we started off the morning talking about really big problems, and we need everyone on board. So you can go ahead and hit next slide. So a couple of tips that I've started sharing, they're not easy, but they are all about that mental wellness and that work-life integration. So think about, just acknowledge what you're feeling and why. Some of the research shows that gratitude journaling helps. Some of the research shows that cognitive restructuring, so replacing a specific negative thought with a specific positive thought, having positive affirmations or something, whatever helps you. My cat is here to help me get through the space and get through quick. Whatever that looks like, leverage the things and the tools that work for you. Talking with others, trusted colleagues and mentors, chances are they're going to relate to the issue you've got, and they'll be able to help you through that. And think about ahead of time, how am I going to get out of something if I feel like I'm in a bad place, or something bad happens in the course of my work or in the course of my transition into a career. What am I going to do about these things? And if you think about them ahead of time, chances are they're not going to feel quite so scary and quite so awful. So it is going to be a lifelong thing, but owning the successes that you have, acknowledging the fact that you have a lot of strengths, is really going to start helping you pull out of this space. If you get into a space that you feel like this is, a problem or an issue, we don't want it to come through on your cover letters. We don't want it to come through in your interviews. We want to make sure that you're confident, assertive, and you own all of the experiences and knowledge that you have. And with that, I think we're almost done.
Yes. So I guess, Tracy, you just touched upon this word courage. So I guess whatever we have spoken about is all in you. It's just that what is important is that how you gather all of this to have that courage to take an unknown path. And it can be any path. Nothing is known for an individual. It's an unknown path. And with the key, I always have been saying that the degree in science is nothing but this golden key that can help you unlock the lock towards the path to success and happiness. So thank you very much. Here are our contact details, and it was a real pleasure working with Tracy. I should also thank Tracy for this joint collaborative presentation that we came across, and we are happy to take questions. Thank you.
I want to echo that. It was an amazing opportunity to get to work with you, and I'm truly blessed. So I want to thank the organizers for brainstorming and coming up with this. This was fantastic.
Yes.
Feeling is mutual, Smita and Tracy. It was fantastic session, and we are being flooded by the questions. And of course, I too have a lot of questions from your session. So I think I'll, while we sort out all the questions that we are getting, and we were also parallelly answering some questions, I think I'll just quickly ask a question. So I think you covered all of the major keynotes that needs to be covered, like, crafting your career rather than strategizing. I like the word Smita uses, crafting, because then that brings out the essence of planning our career properly.
Well, I should give the credit to this to my ex-colleague at India Bioscience, Lakshmi, who actually came up with this word crafting for our career workshop module.
That's an amazing way to
Yes.
look at it. That just changes the perspective that we have
Yes.
for our career. So I think you both touched upon all the questions and the problems that we have in terms of resume and CV. And I specifically like the eye tracking study that you guys presented. It's mind boggling to see such a thing that we tend to miss out, but are very crucial to actually help us go through things. And then obviously you spoke about a lot of tools that was very useful. There is a question that I would like to address, which I'm sure a lot of us always have whenever we talk about crafting our career or career navigation. There's a question that usually stays away from academic discussions, and that is more of, say, I have a career interest that I want to switch to, but that is just starting to evolve in the field. It's something new, and we are seeing the wave of new scientific trends and career options right now. But since it's not a common stream, I'm afraid that it may not fetch me, say, a fixed salary or a good money. And also, as a senior PhD and as a fresh postdoc, or as an early career researcher, we are in an age group where financial stability is something that we all seek. So a lot of us actually end up choosing a career path which is more financially stable, secure. We don't have that courage to go about it. So if you could briefly tell us something about that, that'll be great.
You want to tackle that first?
Tracy, you want to go first? Yeah. Okay.
I can. Either
I
way.
can do.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tracy. We are talking at the same time, Tracy. You go ahead. Or best would be, Rashmi, I would suggest that you point it and then maybe we can take it.
All right. So let's
Okay,
say
Tracy, I'm taking it. I'm taking it.
Okay.
I'm taking it. I'm taking it. Okay. I guess it's a very practical question, Rashmi. It's a very, very practical question. But again, one has to weigh in pros and cons. One has to see the financial implications as well, and definitely one has to have the courage, as I mentioned in my last slide, whether to venture into that unknown path. But if you feel very, very strongly about it, and if it gives you some financial, even if I'm saying if it's not something which is what you would want, one should jump into it. And on a side, see, at the end of it, you have to really work hard if you want to achieve your dreams. Nothing would come easy, nothing would come for free. So the other possibility is that one takes up a job for financial stability, but at the same time continue working for your dream or your passion. That will help you gain that experience and that confidence, and that'll help you at some point in time, maybe a couple of years down the line, to actually jump into that path that's where you wish to be. So one has to be little pragmatic here. It's not that that very first job that you would take would be the end of your career story. No, it's not. If you'll ask me, post my PhD, I didn't know what I want to do. All I knew was I don't want to go for a postdoc because academia is not for me. I was very clear about it. And I didn't know where my passion is, honestly speaking. And that's where I took up a job, because I needed financial stability as well. I needed money. And I took up a job, and I continued to explore. After 3 years, I realized that, okay, there was an opening at C Camp. Let me move let me join as a business development manager. And once I was there, I realized that this is what I really want. I enjoy meeting with people. I enjoy, managing things and helping others. So it's not just a one step process. One has to go step by step and have a little bit of perseverance in order to achieve what you want to achieve. That would be my take, Rashmi.
Um, that tells us something about how to go about it. Um, so we have a lot of questions in our Q&A section, and I'm trying to figure out if it's possible for me to club it, because majorly they fall under the umbrella of how to tackle anxiety during career navigation. This is something that is coming up from a lot of people. But so let me reframe it, because these are essentially multiple questions that I'm trying to address to both of our speakers. There are questions like career navigation is a challenging task for all of us, and during the stage of life where there are issues that are being addressed, as in people who have clinical anxiety, people who are trans community people, and then people who also want to address questions like parenting. So there are a lot of questions coming up, and these are the something that is some topic, something we also need to discuss, that during such uh, issues in our life, I would not call it issues, I'm sorry for that, during certain things in life that we avoid to discuss during our academia, like these, how do we face the challenges and how do we actually help in navigating through the career? Because in science, unfortunately, the current scenario is that we don't usually promote the idea of we don't address the idea of anxiety, trans people inclusiveness, parenthood. So if you could tell us something on that regard, I hope that summarizes a lot of questions that we are getting.
Sure, I don't mind tackling that one. That's a tough one, I will tell you. But the best piece of advice that I can give you in that space, I think, is to start early with thinking about all of these pieces, so that you have the most amount of time to start to grow your network, start to talk to people and understand opportunities, learn skills as you need to, and not wait until 6 months or 3 months to the end of your degree or the end of your postdoc and all of a sudden be like, oh my God, I need to get a job, right? Because then you're forcing yourself into that situation where you have to make the choice to do the thing that you don't want to do. Whereas if you took all of the time to start to move forward, you could think about getting to the dream career that you want to be. Although I was nodding the whole time while you were talking, because I completely agree. You have two choices. You can jump straight into the thing that you really want to do and make it work, or you can find something that sustains you and continue working towards that dream career. Careers are lots of different steps. They are not one big leap to the finish line. and I think that that's important to remember. But you were talking about all of these different dimensions of who we are that impact how we go about our career path. And I think that finding and developing the people around you. So I'm including mentors in this. I'm including all types of people in your network, all the ways that you can find special interest groups, to have those support structures in place to navigate these things. We know in the United States that better than 40% of graduate students are clinically depressed. That doesn't change when you're a postdoc. It doesn't automatically go to zero. We don't have good data on it, but I from my public health training, I know that it doesn't just end and all of a sudden magically go away. So we know that these are problems, and that's a fundamental shift in the way that we need to handle it, the way we need to be talking about it, the way we need to mentor, the types of resources we need to have available for our students, trainees, postdocs, everybody. That equally goes for parents, right? We need to think about, how do we support women who are in their prime childbearing years during graduate school and postdoc? I will be very open and say, I had my first kid in graduate school. I was terrified to tell my mentors because I had two women faculty who told me don't get pregnant in graduate school at all. And then I was pregnant. And so I waited until I was 7 months pregnant. I was like sucking it in the whole time, like wearing tight, Spanx and undergarments to try and keep it all tucked in. And I had my oral exam and passed my qualifications. And then I went and talked to my PI and I said, I'm going to need to take a break in the spring. And he said, okay, sure. But why? Now he was pretty clueless, bless his heart. And I said, well, I'm pregnant and I need to take a maternity leave. And he was like, oh, I started to think you were looking. And then he stopped himself. I was just like, oh, don't do that. But he was tremendous. And then I went and told the PI of my training grant, and he was like, graduate school's a great time to have kids. So you never really know what's in their brain, right? Because the women were telling me don't do it. And then the men who were my mentors and my PIs were like, oh, this is totally fine. It happens all the time. This is great. Fantastic. Right. So I was really in a supportive environment, and that was good. But you have to figure out who your support structures are. And, when I got to my postdoc and I had my second kid, I knew who I could count on to talk to about those kinds of things. But I have talked with postdoc after postdoc after postdoc in my career who struggled with PIs who won't hire women because they're going to have kids. And it's not just a female issue. The men are the parents, right? They have equal responsibilities. I guess sometimes it falls more on the women, but men have issues too, and yet it's completely dismissed, and we dive down that. Now, you did touch on one other aspect of, and that is trans. And I will absolutely say that is definitely also a challenge in science. And again, I want to reiterate, have the people around you who are going to be your champions and your, coaches and your sponsors to help push you through and help elevate your career to the point and help you guide you and move you in the right direction. If you've got something to add to that, I'd be grateful.
Yep. No, I guess you've covered it all. Just one line I would add here, that these are challenges, and these are definitely challenges that exist across the globe, not just in any specific country. And what we really need to do is, one, first understand, accept, and acknowledge that we are facing these challenges. We become vocal about these challenges, because only when we become vocal that the other person would understand. Many a times, these are so overlooked by many people because they do not even understand it as a challenge. So very important that you be vocal and have that support system. In fact, Vijay also mentioned in his, when I had asked that question in the morning, that there should be these informal discussion spaces where you can open up, talk, and that really, really helps to overcome many of the challenges that one faces in day-to-day life. And yes, if it's beyond a certain point, one should also, and that's not just the individual, but the whole ecosystem should be mature enough to acknowledge, accept, and find solutions in the right professional manner. That includes any mental health related challenge as well. So yes, acknowledging, being vocal, and having that support system really helps in tackling with any of these issues.
I would completely agree with Smita and Tracy here. In my last 5 years of my PhD, I think talking out my problems was one of the best way to go about it, because you never know where are you going to find your mentor. It could be your friend, it could be your senior colleague, it could be a junior colleague at times, it could be anybody. So I think talking it out in an informal setup is the best way to go about it, and I completely agree with Smita and Tracy on that. I'm afraid that we are over time, and I can only take one more question, which is by an anonymous attendee. And I think it's very important. That's why I'm taking it. Since we touched upon the networking, the importance of networking, I'm going to take this question by an anonymous attendee who asks, what's the panelist's take on using one's network to reach out to people and inquire about potential and yet unadvertised jobs? Is it a common practice or is it frowned upon?
I'm going first here. I guess it's perfectly okay as long as you are not trying to influence to get that opportunity. As long as you are inquiring using your network in order to understand it better, and that's precisely what you do in an informational interview. So it's perfectly okay, and I would say the opportunities that I have personally found in my career journey so far have been through my networks. And that's why networks are considered so useful and beneficial. So one should, in fact, use the network whichever way possible. And that's something we did mention in the very beginning when we were talking of the network, that use it in a positive way, and you would get lots of information and opportunities come your way. Tracy?
Yeah, I want to I agree with all of that and add that this is why you want to build your network before you need it, right? If you're trying to build it while you need it, it's not going to work. If you build it well ahead of time, you can reach back out to someone that you talked to before and you say, thank you so much for talking to me about your career path. I've decided to move my career in this direction. I'm so excited about it. If you saw a job ad, you could say, I saw an opportunity at your company. I'd love to talk with you more about it if you can. Or, just letting them know that you're moving in that direction. If they hear about things, they're going to call you. They're going to think about you. They're going to put your name forward. That's exactly what you're experiencing. I've had that happen to me as well. I was recruited to the most recent position that I had before I actually mid-career decided to be an entrepreneur. Like the speaker earlier, I hadn't realized how parallel that was until just that moment. But being recruited for a big position, that's a very empowering, I will say. I'm sure you've experienced that. So, you want to set yourself up for success in those spaces. And the way to do that is to talk to a lot of people, let everybody know what you're looking for. In the US, the unpublished job market is significant. I can't imagine that's very different in other countries. I see nodding, so I see that that's true. Everyone I've spoken with, acknowledges this piece. So, you never know when you're talking to someone right before something's going to happen and a job's going to open, right? You just don't know that. Or when they were thinking about, well, it'd be good to add this to the team or it'd be good to add that to the team, but they find the right candidate, that's what they're going to go with, right? And you don't know when those things are going to come along. So just be open to opportunities, be willing to be open and talk about that stuff because it matters. I did want to comment. I think that COVID, while the pandemic is terrible, right, there's some positive things that have come out of it. I think we're more connected through these video conferences. I'm in the US. I wouldn't have been able to travel internationally in the middle of a school year, right? So, this is great. It opens up the opportunity to have more connectedness and have more of those informal conversations. We see it in Facebook. We see it in all these technologies. LinkedIn is another place, right, that professional conversations happen. And I think all of that's good. And we just need to leverage those pieces to help us in all of these different aspects.
Truly pointed out, Tracy. I think this is a great time to network, as you said, that we are in more touch with people across the globe. So this is a great opportunity for all of us to network. With that, we still have a lot of questions, but I'm afraid we can't take it. as we have reached out our time limit, we have to conclude the session. And I think we have mostly covered all of the question answers. So with that, I would like to thank Smita and Tracy once again for accepting our invitations and putting up such an amazing talk and engaging with our participants as well. I hope that helps a lot of us. And thanks for participants as well for making this portal, this session more of a discussion portal. So with that, I hand over the next